are problems again, maybe not realizing that they're dealing with, a pretty significant upgrade and some new systems. So I'm not saying that V3 is going to have some growing pains, but I think it's entirely possible that
Right.
they do. When I was trying
Seems
to get,
plausible.
yeah, I mean, when I was trying to get Elon, I was messaging with him. This was in January to talk to him for the book, and we ended up just sort of going back and forth a little bit about V3. And his quote to me was, version 3 converges to greatness. Which, as Eric said, I think you really need version 3 to unlock all the things to be able to get to the moon and to Mars. But again, we're talking about a huge upgrade, complicated vehicle. The first, what, 2, 3, 4 flights may not be perfect. And then it's all of a sudden we're like, oh, the headline may become, well, SpaceX is struggling again, when they're just sort of working out the kinks of a new system.
I think, and
Yeah.
all this like goes back. It goes back a little bit to some of the stuff we talked about earlier. I mean, I think SpaceX, they, when they were doing all the grasshopper stuff, I mean, it was happening out in Texas. We didn't see it as much, during like the most of their like reusability, early day trials. And then I think
Right.
they just like convinced us all in our head that they're almost flawless, for this big run, and you just get so used to them doing everything kind of faster and better, especially when it comes to aerospace, where everything is always late and worse than you thought. And SpaceX kind of trained you to think a little bit differently. And so, yeah, I find some of this hard to just wrap my head around, just simply from like the way SpaceX has kind of imprinted their modus operandi in my head. And then I find the whole thing, this like this gap. This is, I don't know, we talked about it earlier. I suspect this has gone slower than SpaceX had thought. It's definitely gone slower than I had thought in my head. And so this like gap of opening up space for Rocket Lab against the Falcon 9, for Blue Origin to sort of make progress on different fronts. We saw Stoke Space raise a ton of money. I mean, Eric Schmidt's come in with relativity. All these things are just, I think we're preparing for like a really interesting couple of years when sort of the Falcon 9 competition landscape might change while all this is going on. So I don't know. It's fascinating from like a spectator point of view, if nothing else.
It really is. Sometimes I wish I had a fast forward button. It's as fast as things are moving. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I'm 37. Like, oh geez. Like, okay, well, how much of the show do I get to watch?
There's
but yeah,
no better time to be alive and interested in space than right now, John.
and right now,
I'm convinced
yeah.
this is a more exciting time than even the Apollo era, I believe.
I mean, you couldn't go to a public beach in South Texas and barbecue and have a fire pit and drink with your friends like 300 feet away from the world's largest rocket by a factor of 3 in the Apollo era. Like, no shade to the Apollo era. I wish I could have been there and seen humans walk on the moon. But yeah, we truly are extraordinarily lucky. So version 3, do we think they? I mean, we talked about this just a little bit. Do we think they're going to go through some of the same teething pains? Eric, I'll throw it to you first. I mean, we've seen a lot of component testing being queued up in the form of a bunch of different test tanks getting assembled, which is not necessarily something we saw as much for version 2. I'm optimistic that there won't be growing pains, but I do think it's entirely plausible that there will be. Sort of, what are you expecting from version 3, Eric?
First of all, I have no idea on the technical side of things how long it's going to take. I do think before this started, if you had asked me if we're on flight test 11, still wondering whether the ship is going to get to space and it has not gone orbital yet, I would have not expected that. I would have said that's pretty far below my expectations. But what I struggle with as a reporter in trying to convey to readers and to people is just how much of a quantum leap forward Starship is compared to every other rocket that's been designed and built before. It's not just
I don't
the
think
size
people really understand, because it's
and the
not just
power.
that they're trying something hard. They're not trying to just go fast. They're trying to go fast and do something incredibly hard.
Yes, incredibly hard, and trying to bake in reuse into this monstrous vehicle, and especially the upper stage reuse part of it, which obviously has been a real challenge to them, is just it's people need to give SpaceX some grace, right? With their expectations and for what they're trying to achieve. And so I think on one hand, you can question whether this is the right architecture for humans to go back to the moon, right? Because we're not really developed for that. But I don't think it's really makes too much sense to question the vision behind what Starship is, because this is a problem that Elon and the smartest aerospace engineers have now been trying to tackle for 20 years. And so I think if they've decided that this is the optimum design of a vehicle to unlock rapid reusability and super heavy lift, then I suspect they're correct. And it's just an enormously difficult problem to solve, and it has never been solved in history before. So it's maybe going slower than some of us would have liked, but clearly they're making progress. And we can only really stand on the sidelines and watch and hope for the best with version 3.
We'll definitely all be cheering version 3 on in the same way that we'll be cheering the last version 2 ship on. An hour and 25 minutes to go. Christian, how do you think version 3 is going to go?
Again, it's so hard to say. Are there going to be growing pains? Yeah. But the SpaceX way is they're growing pains. They test, they fail, they innovate, they come back, and they figure it out because they're that good. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say from the outside without inside knowledge of and not being an engineer. But as someone who's followed it for a long time, I mean, actually, I have. See if I can find this. This is if you could see this is the mission patch for the 4th flight of Falcon 1 that someone within SpaceX gave me years ago. And it's like, you think about SpaceX, you think about that down to their last flight. If that doesn't go, they don't exist, right? So I think now I bring that up to show that I think ultimately it will be successful. Whether that's on the first flight or the 8th flight, it's hard to say.
Got it. Ashley, version 3?
I don't think I'm going to top any of that, and I don't have such a cool mission patch to just pull out. What do you have that just at your fingertips, Christian, man?
I have all my mission patches.
So when Sawyer's on, he often will flex and show like a piece of shuttle hardware or like talk about astronauts he's met. I think we just got our first Christian Davin.
When Ashley when he was talking about early days, I was like trying to when I went off camera, I was sorting through my mission patch pile.
I'm jealous now, man. That's a good one.
I'm jealous for the title of your book, When the Heavens Went on Sale.
I should be back. Am I back?
It's an amazing book, as is Liftoff and Reentry. Amazing books. When the Heavens Went on Sale, amazing book, amazing title too. I just
thank you. Everybody hated it that I wrote about.
Snejka Superman renovează, nu înlocui.
Mostly the planet guys. They thought it was too crass and capitalistic, but then now here they are.
I mean, if everybody likes
public
it,
company.
Have you done your job?
No. I was really happy with it.
I can't hear anybody.
I can still hear Christian.
So I have a Falcon 1 patch. It's on my shelf framed. The Flight 4. It's the first one with the
testing. Somebody
before the clover.
We're talking.
We're talking, Jack. But
we can definitely hear Jack.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you guys were talking about the different design philosophies and things like that, and that's one of the things that we're looking at here, right? This is the final launch of this version of Starship. We're sort of turning the page, and you guys have books, so I guess that's an appropriate expression, right? And so now I guess we should turn the page and sort of try to like what is your thoughts? What are your thoughts for today's launch? Because we've been talking about all the politics and everything and all that. I want to hear your thoughts. Like, do you think it's gonna go great? We have that dynamic banking thing. I don't know. Maybe Eric, you can go first on that one.
I fully expect success today. This is like the 5th flight of version 2, 6th flight. I'm not sure. They've flown it a lot. It's a very similar profile to the last flight, and so you would expect that they have learned And if the rocket is changed, they've only made improvements to it. So I would expect and hope for success today. A pretty clean mission.
Yeah, and Christian.
I agree. I think at this point, early on, it's trying to push the boundaries, doing different things. If you fail, the payloads of data. I think on this one, they want a good last flight. I think, obviously from a technical and engineering standpoint, they want to do it as they go into version 3. Also, I think from a PR standpoint, not that that's necessarily what Elon cares about.
Yeah.
I don't think he's being like, oh, I want NASA to look at this and say like, all right, they're back on the ball and I got better headlines. I don't think he cares about that at all. But I think it is now part of the narrative. And, just being realistic that from a PR standpoint, a launch would be good and a failure would not.
And you, Ashley?
Well, I'm not going to be the one who says it's going to blow up on the pad. That would be really sad. I think it'll
Let's
do
hope
well.
no.
No, I think it has to do. I think it's sort of like I fully agree with what Eric was saying a bit earlier. I just think it would be massive step backwards if it doesn't do well, and you want to carry some momentum into all these things that they have to accomplish that are coming up, and so some of it's is psychological. I think the I think the company could kind of use heading into V3 with a win behind it.
Yeah, I hope so too. I really hope we get through all that. I think Jack. Speaking of recoveries, I guess.
Hey,
Jack is
who
back.
let you take over? So,
You
sorry,
went away.
Had a bit of a Wi-Fi hiccup there.
Are you on Starlink, Jack, or what's going on?
I am not on Starlink.
There you go.
But yeah, it's my fault. It's my bad. Wow. Okay, that was a really good discussion. Thank you all so much. I think we're getting very close to wrapping it up here. Really quick though, Christian, what's your optimistic prediction for the next 5 to 10 years into space flight? Where do we end up in, say, 2030, middle of the 2030s, if all the good levers get pulled?
Yeah, I think multiple. I mean, just take the moon for example. I think multiple landers on the moon, crewed and uncrewed. Given all the companies from Intuitive Machines to Blue Origin to SpaceX. But let's since we've talked a lot about international, not just China, but India as well. I mean, nobody talks about India, but they've got a huge, robust space program. I don't know. I think by the middle of the 2030s, the commercial space stations are viable as well. I think those are some big things. And the thing too about Starship, to end it on sort of an optimistic note, if that's going, think about the science, the number of telescopes that can be launched on that thing that don't have to be folded up like a piece of origami to fit into the fairing, and the discoveries that we can make about the solar system and the universe when you're able to have that kind of access to space could be extraordinary.
Absolutely. Ashley?
Man, I'm trying to be realistic here. I get excited when we get to middle of the 2030s. I think middle 2030s. I think we're talking about Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, and SpaceX as the dominant American space powers. I think finally, I've been waiting for this the whole time I've been covering this. I think we have like a new idea, something that's in low Earth orbit that is doing something interesting beyond communications and imaging, and somebody's like cracked the code on that, and it's been inspired by Starship and the economics and the weight that it can carry to space. I think it's been inspired by having multiple companies that can get to space on a regular basis. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try not to get too excited, but I think by 2035, going way back to the start of our conversation, I think we're in a new industrial era in low Earth orbit. Yeah, I'm buying into that. I'm sticking on that.
All right, I'll take it. I'll take it. Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal point, Ashley. Like, if space is really going to open up, we need to have some kind of economic use case for space. beyond sort of what's happening in communications, observation, and transport today. And that we don't know what that is. And we're all hoping that once launch becomes ubiquitous and cheap and access to orbit really opens that up, and we find those use cases, because beyond sort of government contracts. So I'm eager to find that as well, hoping we do. 10 years from now, I'd love to see launch be a commodity, cheap, much more like airport-like operations, the vision Elon has been pushing for forever. He's getting there with Falcon 9, so I'd love to see that with Starship, eventually New Glenn, Stoke, Rocket Lab, hopefully, other companies perhaps. Hopefully we have like months-long sorties on the surface of the moon with astronauts, and we're finding meaningful things to do there economically, because if it's just flags and footprints and there's not really meaningful economic things to do on the moon, then I'm not sure what we're going to be doing there long term. Hopefully we've sent some cargo missions to Mars. I just don't see humans on Mars within the next 10 years. And I'd love to see like an asteroid return to Earth with platinum or other rare earth metals. I think it's possible to do some asteroid mining and get at least small amounts back within the next decade. So there's lots of potential. I think all of it, though, hinges on unlocking some kind of economic benefit for these space activities, because if it's just governments, it's not going to enable kind of the humans as a multiplanetary species that all of us on this panel, I think, want to see.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I think,
Well, go ahead, Ashley.
we gotta. The asteroid mining I used to think was just totally nuts, and now I'm here for it, and I think it's feasible, and I want to see it.
Me too.
Right. I really hope we get to that point. Ashley, thank you so much for being on. You have written 2 books, one about Elon Musk and also When the Heavens Went on Sale, which just came out. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you guys so much.
Also, Eric, you are a legend. You're all 3 legends. Eric has written Liftoff and Reentry, and they're both absolutely worth reading, as well as Ashley's. Eric, thanks for being on.
It's my pleasure, and it's great to be on with Ashley. He wrote the definitive biography of Elon more than a decade ago when he was
you don't need that. You don't need that other Walter one. Just read Ashley's.
Yeah, he got all this information when it was impossible to get, and it was just really an inspiration for me as a writer myself.
Wow, thanks, man.
And Christian, thank you so much for being on. You wrote Rocket Barons and Rocket Dreams, or sorry, Space Barons and Rocket Dreams. And thanks so much. Everybody should read all of these books, and then you will be the most informed of any one of your friends about this stuff.
Thanks, guys. That was so much fun. Really appreciate it.
We should do a
Heck
value
yeah.
pack.
A value pack? Yeah, we should. That's actually a really good idea. See, always thinking. Oh, yeah, and Ashley's on Core Memory as well. Check them out on YouTube. Gentlemen, this has been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again sometime. But in the meantime, we have a launch day to do. So we'll see you all sometime soon.
Good luck.
In the meantime,
Good luck.
say what?
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks. We'll need it. In the meantime, I do believe we have a playback about Flight 11 explaining where we're at. Let's go take a look at that.
With every new Starship launch, it means we get to know what's new, and while in general the flight profile is similar to the previous flights, there are some interesting differences to note for this launch. As you probably already know, Flight 11 will be featuring Ship 38 on its first and only flight, and Booster 15 on its second. This would be the second reuse of a Super Heavy booster, and as you can imagine, a good number of its engines are being reused as well. In particular, SpaceX says 24 of the booster's 33 Raptor engines are flight proven, although we don't know if those flight proven engines were also flown on B-15's first flight, or if they're a mix from other previously flown boosters. Just as with the last couple of flights, the booster will not be recovered, and will in fact be trying new experiments to gather data for future generations of boosters. In particular, this booster will have a different landing burn profile than normal, and it's one that will be used on version 3. The landing burn will start with 13 engines as usual, but instead of directly down selecting to 3 engines, it'll down select to 5 engines instead. According to SpaceX, version 3 Super Heavy boosters will use 5 engines during the section of the burn that's responsible for fine-tuning the booster's path. That's basically the really scary part of the landing, where the booster has slowed down a lot with the 13 engines, and it's now flying itself over to the launch tower for the catch. This, SpaceX says, will add additional redundancy for spontaneous engine shutdowns. This is something that seems logical, considering that this is the point when the booster starts its flight over to the tower, and with 5 engines they'll have way more more control if one goes out than if they have only 3 engines. Another benefit that SpaceX does not point out, but that may be part of this new plan, is that this burn would be more efficient with a lower propellant consumption. It seems counterintuitive because there are technically more engines firing during the landing burn, but it also means the booster has more power to counter the force of gravity while it slows down and swings over to the tower. The net result is a shorter landing burn that's more powerful and overall more efficient, as there's less wasted force to counter gravity. This efficiency gain can be confirmed by the fact that the planned landing burn duration will be 4 seconds shorter than on the previous flight, or in relative terms about 20% shorter. We're not fully sure which 2 engines from the middle ring of 10 engines they'll use to go along with the 3 center engines, but we'll find out soon enough on flight day. That being said, the landing burn will not end on those 5 engines though. For the final phase of the burn, the booster will be down selecting to the center 3 engines as usual and finishing the landing burn high above the water like on flight 10, which will result in the planned explosion of booster 15. That's right, a planned explosion. I can already tell you, it's not meant to survive that plunge from high above, no matter how much we want it to. The entire reason for the plunge is to ensure that no big pieces of the booster survive and stay afloat for several hours, drifting into Mexican waters. You get the point. That's the plan for the booster, but of course there's a ship up above which will also be doing its thing. Much like on Flight 10, Flight 11 will again feature the deployment of 8 Starlink simulators from the ship's payload bay. Ship 38 will also do another in-space relight of one of its Raptor engines, and there'll be another round of heat shield tests. But unlike on Flight 10, there won't be as many heat shield tests. From what SpaceX has posted on its website, we should only expect the usual missing tiles experiment that they've run on previous flights, but it doesn't mention anything about new materials or anything like that. One important detail they did add about these missing tiles is that several of these will be in locations where the tiles are bonded to the vehicle, that is, glued instead of pinned, and have no backup ablative layer. This means Ship 38 may very well come back with some holes in those places as a result. On previous flights, most of the tiles that had been removed were in places where the tiles were pinned to the vehicle instead of glued, and therefore there is a backup ablative layer behind the tiles. This meant that, despite there not being a tile, there was at least that ablative material protecting the ship. It'll definitely be interesting to see how the ship fares after going through re-entry in that way, and I'm sure SpaceX is even more interested in seeing that, given that's what they're planning to do. Finally, Ship 38 will also fly a path closer to what future ships will take when returning back to Starbase. According to SpaceX, the final phase of Starship's flight trajectory includes a dynamic banking maneuver, and it will test subsonic guidance algorithms prior to the landing burn. Given this language on its website, it seems to imply that this dynamic banking will happen during the belly flop part of the flight. I certainly have no idea what that would look like, but I'm very excited to find out. The ship's landing burn also seems to occur a bit earlier and might be a little longer based on the times from the planned timeline for Flight 11 on SpaceX's website. It'll be interesting to see if the ship also tries to simulate as if it were landing on the chopsticks, which could explain the longer burn time this time around. What's interesting about this flight is that despite the majority of it being similar to the previous flights, the landing of both booster and ship will give us a glimpse into what we'll see next year with version 3 starships. It's probably going to be a few months until that happens, so we should really take in everything we can about this flight and enjoy the show. That way, at least the wait for Starship's 12th flight won't feel as long.
And we are back at Starbase. Well, I'm not there, but the rocket sure is, and we are just keeping an eye on things. I'm Lon Seidman. I'll be helping host the NSF stream here for a little bit, right through the launch and the cruise and the landings and all of the things in between. And I want to say hello, first of all, to my friend Alex, who's joining us. I know we're going to have a more up-to-date status update soon, but what's the quick update you can give us right now for launch today?
Yeah, we got that rundown of what to expect on Flight 11, and of course, before any of that happens, we are about an hour and 7 minutes away. We have now seen the chill down of the propellant lines to the tower. Those are the ones that run up and sort of connect to the ship. It's like a really tiny vent going on right now on the tower, but that's a great sign. I'm also seeing some of the other camera views as well. Some of those propellant lines on the launch mount are also getting frosty, so we should see the launch mount vent coming up. It's a little bit later than we are expecting, right? We usually expect these things T-minus 1 hour and 20 minutes. So maybe we'll see a 10-minute delay. I don't know. We'll see. definitely. Once SpaceX gives us some more updated information, we'll relay it as soon as possible.
But we have some room in the window, so these things can happen. And my experience in hosting these things is they don't wheel me out here on NSF until the staff behind the scenes is confident that something's going to happen. So I'm usually a good omen. We'll see if that continues today. And we'll have a much bigger update in a few minutes when we get to the top of the launch count with 1 hour to go. And before we do, though, Alex, we got a lot of folks in the queue here we want to thank. Tim Riley here with a $100 super chat. Thank you very much for that. Luke Ortiz, a $2 super chat. Greetings from Germany with €5 from Vanessa there. Thank you very much for that. Bidford with a $50 super chat. Talking about the fact that this is kind of a milestone, Alex, right? We're seeing the end of V2 and something new after this, right?
Yeah, the end of Pad 1 as well as we know it right now. That's why our patch is sort of featuring that iconic donut shape. You can see there already the OLM vent, that launch mount vent that I was mentioning here, and some of those lines getting frosty there on the top there. So yeah, great to see. We should savor this and take it in as we are getting ready for the final flight with this hardware here. So yeah.
And it's not just the rocket hardware, it's the ground hardware too. We're going to have something different to look at with the new launch pad.
Yeah, lots of new things, new pad, The tower looks a lot like the first one, but it's got a lot of new and very interesting upgrades that we're going to see once it comes online.
How the hell are we supposed to fight that? Take it down.
Mustang 1, this is Control.
What?
We see you're in
Are you
distress.
kidding
Can
me?
you confirm your situation? Over.
Oh my God!
Mustang 1.
Mayday,
Do
mayday.
you copy?
Holy shit!
Mustang 1. Please respond.
Looks like we have another OLM vent.
Yep. It is currently ongoing. That's part of the chill down, as I was saying before. There are these propellant lines that go to the launch mount and that go to the tower. And those were just essentially at the temperature that is at Starbase right now. And you've got very cold liquid oxygen, very cold liquid methane, right? So they flow this, they let it, boil off and everything. They have this vent that you can see a little bit more active. It'll get a lot more active over time, but that is essentially where we are right now. Just preparations ahead of loading all of this propellant on board Starship.
Great, and thank you to Mark Fetco for his super chat there. And we also have some love for Jack here, if I can find it in the queue, for conducting that great discussion we just heard with all of those great journalists here on NSF talking about the future of the space program. And we're kind of seeing that future today because so much of NASA's plans kind of rest on what we're going to see today with Starship, Alex, right?
Yeah, this is a critical moment. As I was saying, sort of it's turning the page, right? It's the end of version 2, version 3. We have already seen hardware for docking ship to ship. We're gonna have that in space refueling demonstration, hopefully HLS down the line, Mars missions as well. Like that is what's going to be enabling some of those missions as well. There's going to be future upgrades, of course. This is not going to be just version 3 and done. There's more upgrades down the line, but it's the first one where it's like, okay, now we're getting serious, right? So yeah, it's a really important mission today.
And Waco Jones with the super chat here, praying for a good flight, as are we, because we want this mission to succeed, because this is how things move forward. We had a great one on the last mission. And Alex, too, this seems like a much faster cadence now between Flight 10 and Flight 11. Is this the fastest cadence and turnaround we've seen so far in the Starship program?
Not yet. There's been at least one turnaround that's been faster, but this is the second fastest if it launches today. If it launches tomorrow, it will be the third fastest because things with Starship, I don't know, it's 48 days. There was another one that was 49 days. So if it delays to tomorrow, it's going to be about the same time. So it's going to become third fastest.
Got it. Well, it's funny, when I first got into this space coverage game, I was following the initial launches of Falcon, and there were some very long spaces between launches, and of course, there was many delays. In fact, I was there in Florida as the countdown got to 0, the engines lit for a split second, and that was it, and I went home without seeing a launch. It looks like Starship, once they get going, it gets off the pad just about every time here. Eric, super chat for $40 for supporting all of our efforts here. There's a lot that goes into these streams. It's amazing seeing how all the different components come together for one of these big streams, and NSF has been doing tremendous work here, and I really appreciate everybody who is contributing to make that happen. Mark Jones here. In this new space age, we have the end of only, yes, that's true. It seems like we're never going to have the end of first phases, Alex, right? This is the new space age where, you know, we're going to Mars and maybe beyond, and there's always a next phase. So this is exciting stuff.
There's only more and more phases, and once, I mean, you said it, right? Like Mars and then beyond. What is going to be beyond? We don't know. We'll get there when we get there, right? We'll see what we do after that. Maybe, you know, the asteroid belt, the moons of Jupiter, Saturn, whatever, right? Like that's many decades down the line, but you know, still, it's a possibility in the long future.
Warp drives and wormholes. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Ooh, that's a long way to go, but yeah.
You never know. It happens quick, right? So there you go. Paul Boyle from just in Ireland, just back in from Ireland, from Florida, who went to his first launch. And Alex, you finally did get to see a launch coming to visit us a few years, last year, I think it was, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that nowadays launches are so common that if you go to Florida to the Cape, you're bound to see, even like for a week, you're probably gonna see 2 or 3 launches. Nowadays, this past couple of weeks though, you'd been in a very bad luck streak because the weather has been horrible, and so a lot of launches have been delayed. But any other time of the year, as long as there's no hurricanes offshore and things like that, it should be good to go for launches. So yeah, it's really amazing.
And we're about to hit the 1 hour mark, and it's amazing how fast, you know, when I host these things, how fast that hour goes by. So what can we expect here in the next few minutes? I know we have a big update coming up once we hit the top of the countdown hour here.
Yeah, we're seeing those vents on the OLM, on the tower, just you know, continuing to track here. I would say if there's no delay, that'd be interesting because that will be a rather quick chill down. This whole thing, as I said before, right? Those are very cold cryogenic propellants that are being flowed through these pipes, right? And so these lines, all of these propellant lines, they need to be at the right condition, at the right temperature ahead of propellant load. And so that's one of the things that we should be. Yeah, I just saw. Apparently, the SpaceX clock has entered a hold.
All right.
And that was the thing that I was waiting.
Right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because some of these timings were not sort of on track with what we had seen before. But I must say, so for people that might be doomering this in chat, it's probably not going to be for that long because the timings, as I said before, it was like maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes later than usual. So that means it's not going to be for a long time.
So, and this is something I think what you were seeing this kind of playing out. How long is the launch window here, though? We have some buffer, right?
Yeah, the window runs for 75 minutes, and if it is indeed about 15 minutes or so of delay, they will still have another hour. So that's plenty of time to use there on the launch window. And that's one of the things that these test flights sort of gives them, right? Because once they start doing tanker flights, those are instantaneous launch windows. They need these windows to have more opportunities.
All right, everybody. Well, just to give you an update here, this is Lon Seidman on behalf of NSF. I'm joined by Alex Romero here, and we are covering the launch of the Starship Test Flight 11. There's been 11 of these, if you can believe that, and every one of them is spectacular. It never gets old. We've got a pretty big update here for everybody to know what's going on. So we're at basically the 1 hour mark at this point. Alex, to start off with, we just got an announcement that there's going to be a hold. We don't know for how long. What's going on?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're sort of looking at here right now. We seem to be in a little bit of a hold. The OLM and tower vents are going, so that's good. Like it's a hold that is just to give them a little bit of time, right? It's not that suddenly we're not doing a launch today. No, 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 no. This is just that they need a little bit of more time. And as we said, this is a 75-minute window, so they have plenty of time, and so they just need that little bit more, right? And that's what really is important about this. As I said before, these vents are just part of the preparations for propellant load. That propellant load starts roughly at the T-minus 54-minute mark, and so they need to do all of these chill downs and everything, and they need to go through their poll. There's a go no go poll, and that sort of clears out at T-minus 1 hour and 15 minutes. And so once we have the go for propellant load from SpaceX, that'll be the final confirmation that we are indeed into propellant load. But just to say, if they had actually gone to propellant load right now, those vents, at least the one on the tower will be like dying off, and then it sort of comes back on. We've seen this so many times that we already have it sort of timed, or at least guessed down to like 5-10 minutes of uncertainty, right? So just from the timings that we have seen, we think that it might be like 10-15 minutes or so of delay. So we'll stand by and see what SpaceX says, but still we have not gotten any official confirmation about them actually going for propellant load yet from that go no go poll. So we'll stand by for that.
And so, and a hold like this does not mean we're in any kind of issue here. It's just that they have time to do things correctly, and they may need a little bit more time to get to that, that decision point. All right, well, also joining us for some updates here is our friend Ryan Keaton, who's joining us as well. So I believe on my notes here that you are handling the air and the sea. So what's the air and the sea looking like right now insofar as the conditions for launch today?
Well, I turn up and then they tell me to put things behind me. But we've been keeping an eye on how things are looking. We saw, if you joined us with our stakeout stream earlier on, we could see those range helicopters coming in and out. That's always wonderful to see. So those are the only assets we're seeing right now for the in terms of the airspace. Nothing of concern in the sea space right now. And as you can see by this wonderful view, the weather's looking pretty good as well. And it's looking so good, in fact, that SpaceX has just verified that they are go for the countdown sequence. So fingers crossed everything proceeds smoothly from this point. It clearly doesn't look like that much of a delay, Alex. Looks like maybe, what, 4 minutes or so into the window, but like it's a 75-minute long window. They've pretty much got all day to launch Starship.
Exactly. This is the kind of goal that, again, we should have expected like by 15 minutes ago, right? So it sort of tracks with what we were saying before. We'll probably get a new T0 soon from the SpaceX website, but that's sort of where we are right now. These things, again, we have been tracking this for so many flights, so many tests, that it's already down to a science, I guess. So when it comes on like, oh, it's like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, you already start to see those things. But yeah, one of the things that I'm looking forward to right now is that tower vent should have like its activity sort of dies off at one point, but that is not the indication that it's going to go into propellant load. It's actually when it comes back again, because it sort of comes back again really powerful. It looks like, you see there that there's like a cape behind the tower. It gets a lot more active. It's going to look really, really cool. And once that happens, it's sort of the trail off. It's sort of the end portion of that conditioning of the tower lines. And that's when we go into that propellant load of the ship. There's also going to be a lot of activity, for example, on the tank farm area. There are these things called subcoolers where they are essentially cooling down the propellant, both the liquid oxygen and the liquid methane, below their boiling temperature, so they are denser and they can pack more of that onto the tanks. And so one of the things that happens is that the subcoolers for the liquid methane are going to become really, really active once liquid methane load starts on both the ship and the booster. So those things are going to give us the clue as to where we are in that propellant load sequence, but we are getting very, very close.
All right, we're getting there, and it looks like we don't have a new T0 time, but things are not being delayed here, at least in a way that would result in a scrub so far here. So things are looking positive, again, which is why they usually roll me out right before launch time here. And I guess while we're waiting for the new T0 time, and I can let either one of you kind of tee this one up, For the people watching who maybe watched a few of these things casually, this launch is not going to look all that different than the last one, but there are some things happening here that are significant, that are going to push this hardware harder than they did last time. So maybe, Alex, we'll start with you. What should we be looking for that's different than the last mission?
Oh man, I'm looking forward to the return of both the booster and the ship, right? We always mention that it's really important for them to be able to bring those back, because this is supposed to be a fully reusable rocket. And so they're testing new things. They're testing a new landing burn profile for the booster. They're testing this thing that they call dynamic banking maneuver during the entry portion, the latter portion of the entry on the Starship. So it's like, I really want to see what that looks like, because we have not seen that, right? And so we're gonna try and get to see all that when they return.
All right, and I think we're going to have a weather report from the field here in just a second, so we will get an idea as to what the weather is looking like. It looks great, and maybe we'll turn it over to Adam now if he's ready to tell us what weather's looking like.
Well, I'm sure everybody always asks for the weather reports, and if Adam's not coming on here like every 10, 15 minutes giving a weather report, normally that means the weather's normally pretty good, because I'll go on the back channel and tell people, 80, 90% chance that favorable weather. And so there's not a whole lot to talk about, but there is a little bit to talk about. So the graphic that you see here is a weather balloon. So when I give my forecast, it's always a model run. So it's a model forecast. It's predicting what it thinks the wind could be. But to make sure it's correct, SpaceX is going to launch actually more than one weather balloon. They normally launch 2, sometimes up to 3 weather balloons a little bit before launch, about 2 hours before launch, and they collect the data to verify that what they're going to send the rocket into is favorable weather conditions. And that's what this little plot is this is actually one of the SpaceX weather balloons. Circled in yellow, I have the winds aloft. So from the bottom of the graphic to the top of the graphic, that's from the ground going up really high, surpassing pretty much where the air is in the atmosphere. The rocket's going to go further than that, but the region that we have to worry about winds and wind shear, I'm not seeing anything. Up a little bit aloft, there is a little bit where the winds go from like 5 knots and all of a sudden it goes up to like 20, 25, 30 pretty quick. That's still within limits. I'm not seeing anything tracking anything like wind-wise conditions like that would be anything. Now, another thing is we also have to think about, yes, it's getting launched from here. If they also have to have the ship splash down in the Indian Ocean. I checked that area. That area seems like it's favorable to do a landing. There is a little bit of wind shear actually out there, but it still seems within limits. And we also have to think about splashdown, because splashdown's off the coast. There is, if we can pull up the satellite, there is actually some clouds, low clouds that I've been talking about that are trying to filter in. That's really not going to have a major impact on anything. Just viewing conditions, there might be a few of those small little puffy white cumulus clouds around. But the good news is there is some rain showers that are further east out in the Gulf where you can see those thicker clouds just due east. But those rain showers will be getting closer to where the splashdown of the booster will be. But so far, I've been looking at a lot of lightning data, making sure there's not a lot of electrical activity in those, and there is not at this current time. So it's something they're probably monitoring and watching just to verify, that we don't start getting electrical charged clouds. Luckily today, though, we do have a cap inversion. So there's warm air aloft that's actually helping suppress a little bit of the upward development of these showers. So these showers aren't able to get up there really high like last launch, like Flight 10, where we got the big anvils that were spreading over, and that could be electrical and causing the scare delays of possibly not being on the launch. So we're not going to have that, because we do have a suppression that's kind of putting a lid on those clouds. So luckily for that, conditions look favorable, not tracking anything that should cause any delays weather-wise. So other than that, I'll bring it back to y'all, and hopefully we have a great launch.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Adam, and great to hear the weather is looking good. A lot of different places where you have to check the weather, given where Starship needs to leave the atmosphere and then come back in. And of course, we also have the booster, which we'll talk more about what we expect to see in a few minutes. Alex, we've got some good news, I hear.
Yeah, we have, as we expected, the launch time has moved a little bit, but we're now counting down, as you can see up there on the clock. It's weirdly, it's like 23 minutes past the hour, so it will be 6:23 p.m. Central, but it's like with 41 seconds. So it's not like right at the top of the minute, which is quite interesting. But indeed, we are now rolling the clock there. So in a couple of minutes, we should start to see that start of propellant load. We can see now what I said before, that the tower vent there has died off. It's like it's now very slow, very...
Cumpără Cosmeplant în orice rețea și câștigă o vacanță în Egipt.
Again, that's sort of like the end portion of that chill down, and then it'll go away, and that's our clue that they are going into liquid oxygen load on the ship. For the liquid methane, which is the first thing that's going to come up in the timeline, that should be with those subcoolers, as I was mentioning before, on the tank farm. They're going to become really, really active. So we'll stay tuned for that. We'll keep an eye on that. I'm having all of the feeds here on my other screen.
All right, and Ryan, I'm told we're going to be hyped up here because we've got some hype-worthy video here because we are go for prop launch, and I believe, Ryan, there's a video that we have to point to at this point.
Yeah, edited
but we
by
need
yours
everybody
truly.
to be hyped.
I'm hyped.
Everybody, we can't play the video unless everybody is hyped enough to play the video. You know, that's how the hype video works. You know, chat, we need to be hyped. We need to be excited because in 55 minutes time, we are about to see the final ever launch from Pad 1 in its current configuration of this version of Starship from Starbase. It's bittersweet, but we can still be hyped for it nonetheless. We're going to see Booster 15, Ship 38 going and doing its thing, flying off into the Indian Ocean. Fingers crossed it'll make it. I think we've teased it long enough, Kevin. I think we can probably roll the hype video.
Hype meter is charged. Roll that tape.
Let's go!
Ship 36 just blew up.
Oh my God.
Here's ignition.
We have liftoff.
We have 33 healthy Raptor engines.
Restriction cut off.
And hot staging, look at that. Wow.
Fly, baby, fly.
Let's go! The booster is no go for a catch.
All right, we are back monitoring activities at Starbase in Texas, awaiting our launch of Starship test flight number 11. And this is Lon Seidman here on behalf of NSF. I'm joined by Alex Romero and Ryan Caton today, and we've got lots of things to share with you. But before we do, we have some super chats to bring to your attention. Unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine here. Don't want to breathe that stuff in, but we do appreciate your super chat.
Nailed it.
I nailed it. I got it. How about that? So just wanted to wish you all good luck. We're all counting on your coverage. Jokes aside, thank you as always for your streams and insightful commentary. Let's see some 11s in chat along with that hype to send off Booster 15 and Ship 38 on a successful 11th flight test. And Bidford is coming in with a $10 super chat to get that hype going. Lots of chat hype here with UK Hudson also joining in on the fun there. So good stuff, and we'll be pointing out some more of these super chats as we go here, including this one from Patrick. So thank you all for your super chats, including see if I can get this one, Dahanje Anand, DJ. So thank you very much for your support. So we are counting down here. We have about 51 minutes or so left in the count. We had a hold, but that hold has lifted, and it looks like we have propellant loading going in. And I think our next order of business, gentlemen, is to talk about the tank farm. and what's going on there. So I don't know, we'll start with Alex and then turn it over to Ryan.
Yeah, you can see there on the top left view on your screen, you can see those subcoolers, exactly what I said there. Those sort of sideways vents that they have, and they become really, really active. That is confirmation that they are indeed now loading fuel, that liquid methane into the ship. Liquid oxygen load should start in about 5 minutes from now. We'll keep in track of that tower vent, which, if you remember, I said, oh, it's gonna die off, it's gonna come back, and when it comes back, it's gonna be a lot more active. It is indeed. It's now quite a vent, if you will. I was trying to do a pun, but it didn't work. And so, about 5 minutes after liquid oxygen load on the ship, we'll get to the booster side of things. So it sort of starts first with the ship, and then and then goes to the booster. And so and then for each one, they start first on the fuel, on the liquid methane, and then they do the liquid oxygen. Remember, in space, there's no oxygen. I mean, there is, but it's not something that you can really get into your engines, right? Like, you really need to bring your own oxygen. So most of the rocket, it's in fact like 80% of the mass of Starship is actually liquid oxygen when it is fully loaded with propellants. So, you know, it's a very essential thing that they need to load onto Starship. So, yeah, I mean, going well, man. It's this. I'm really right now. My heart is racing. Words.
It just never gets old. It's amazing. You know, we've seen this is going to be the 11th one of these that we've covered, and it just keeps getting that heart rate going. Ryan, how are you feeling right now, and what do you think things are looking like down there?
I'll be honest with you, I had a high heart rate alert on my watch halfway through that guest panel segment we had. Nowhere near the launch, so I don't even want to look up what it's reading at right now, to be perfectly honest with you, but I'm sure it's high. Under 50 minutes to go. I mean, it's always wonderful to see all of the vents going at the tank farm. I mean, this is a mechanical system that literally comes alive, you know? The materials are contracting and expanding as the fluids flow through them. This thing is just, you can hear it creaking as it comes to life. And as I said, this is the last time, fingers crossed, that this is going to happen with this specific infrastructure in this configuration, yada, 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 right? So, boy, we are at the end of a very exciting 11 flights of an era, if that makes sense. But yeah, ever since Flight 1, this good old orbital launch mount literally got destroyed. The concrete got shredded to bits, and it came back for Flight 2, and it's, you know, performed flawlessly, shall we say, ever since.
It's amazing how resilient it is, and you can hear that venting going on there and everything coming alive. And one of the things I always love to talk about when we talk about spaceflight is that this is not just rocket science. This is civil engineering. It's plumbing. It's all the things that go into just about any kind of engineering task that you might have is something that goes into this mission. And all of those pieces have to come together to get Starship off the ground. And we are seeing some questions in the chat about what we can expect visually during this launch. So one thing we can guarantee is that there will be explosions today. What we are hoping is that the explosions are not rapid, unplanned disassemblies or RUDs, but rather RAD, which are rapid assumed disassemblies, where these rockets will. Is that good? I'm trying to bring in the 80s,
That was good. That was
the 80s
good.
vernacular. Or perhaps rapid authorized disassemblies. So the first one that we're going to see is after the booster separates, it's going to come back down. And of course, we've been seeing some of these boosters get caught by the Mechazilla there, but that's not going to happen today. So that booster is going to be sent into the ocean for destruction, but not before they test some new landing maneuvers. And Ryan, maybe you could fill us in a little bit. They're going to be doing something different as that booster's coming back down again.
Yeah, so we saw on the last flight, Flight 10, they were doing engine experiments there as well. So I'll just quickly run through the kind of different landing configuration we've seen. Ever since Flight 5, with the boosters, when they've come back in for a catch, they've lit all 13 of the inner Raptor engines, or at least the ones that are working, that is, as it comes back down for its landing burn. And then it's down selected to the 3 super middle engines, right, as it then kind of slides over into the chopstick arms. On the previous flight, they were testing a new configuration to prepare if they ever had an engine out. That's a Raptor not working on that middle ring of 3 engines. So they use 2 of those middle 3 engines and then 1 Raptor engine selected on the 13 engine ring, that middle ring, if that makes sense. This time, however, they're testing an even newer configuration. They're going to start with those all 13 of those gimbaling Raptor engines, but then they're going to down select to 5 Raptor engines. That's the 3 center Raptors and then 2 engines from that middle ring of 13. We're not exactly sure which 2 they are, but it's going to be, you know, one of those 2 engines which is symmetrically placed apart, we can assume. I think that's pretty safe to assume. And then from that point, it'll then down select further to those 3 middle engines. And that way, the landing burn can be slightly shorter, and even though they're technically using more engines, it's actually more efficient because they're going to be using those the additional thrust outweighs the additional propellant use, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and this booster was one of the boosters that was caught successfully before. We did have a big debate about whether it's being landing or if it's being caught. So you can choose.
It's both. It's both.
It's both, right? So, but this one did get caught and landed before, and it's been refurbished and is going back up again. So this is the 2nd flight of this booster. It will be the last flight of this booster. And of course, it will explode spectacularly when it hits the ocean, and hopefully not before all of those mission objectives are accomplished. And then from there, Starship continues its journey. We're going to see those dummy Starlink simulators get deployed from its little cargo bay there, a rather large cargo bay there. And then the Starship will return. And I expect, Ryan, that we're going to see, just as we saw before, stuff melting off of the rocket here. Hopefully things not exploding like we saw last time, but they will be doing more tests of the heat shield and really pushing that thermal protection system.
Yeah, exactly. And first on this booster, I was fortunate enough to be in Starbase for Starship's 8th flight test, and this is the booster that flew on that flight, booster 15.
Oh, cool.
So, you know, a little bit of sweet for me. The booster I actually saw get caught with my very own eyes. SpaceX is just throwing it into the Gulf like it's your average Monday. Not too happy about that. But anyways, on the ship side of things, yeah, we have seen SpaceX removing patches of tiles from various locations around the vehicle. They're not doing materials testing like they did last time. You might remember they were doing some different materials or individual tiles. This time around, they're all the normal material, but they're actually just ripping off tiles in particular places. They're also testing those aft flaps. We can see there just above the ship quick disconnect, which is also going to be something to keep an eye out on. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how Ship 38 holds up with those bigger patches of tiles missing. I want to be optimistic. I want to say this thing is a big honking bit of stainless steel that's been built in, you know, South Texas in the sun. There's something about vehicles built at Starbase that just make them so resilient to anything you can throw at them. I mean, we saw with Starship's first flight, they tried to set off the flight termination system, but the vehicle was so strong that the flight termination system wasn't strong enough to actually destroy the vehicle. So my fingers are crossed it'll make it all the way through. But yeah, those tiles, missing tiles, that is definitely something to keep an eye on.
And again, we may see things melt away that they are kind of aware that they are going to melt away just because they're testing the thermal protection system here. And then, Alex, I believe you're back now. Are we going to see some different maneuvers in the atmosphere too as Starship comes down to the ocean?
Well, as for what might be different, we heard from SpaceX about that dynamic banking maneuver that they called, right? Mm-hmm. Getting ready for when Starship comes back to Starbase and they start catching ships, right? And so we don't know what that might look like. My whole sort of own theory, if you will, is that it will probably be sort of like a combination of pitch and roll of the ship and try to align itself with the direction of where the tower is. Because when Starship launches from here, from pad 1, the launch tower is facing east, right? So when the booster comes back, it's coming back to a tower that is facing it directly. When the ship comes back, if it comes to pad 1, the ship will be facing, because it's going to be coming west to east, so it's going to be facing east, right? So no problem with that. But future ships will actually be caught on pad 2, because it's the one that is currently with the hardware that's sort of compatible with ship catches. So when that happens, the ship needs to have a way to be able to sort of face south, right, ahead of that catch. And so my guess is that probably this dynamic banking maneuver is both a sort of like a roll in a pitch, so that it can sort of reorient itself to face south and be able to do that flip and landing burn in that orientation. Now, I I have no idea. That's a theory, right? That's my own theory. So I just want to see this. I just want to see this, SpaceX. Let's
That's
go.
right. and we have to get through the entire coast phase here. We have to get back into the atmosphere in mostly one piece, and then we can see exactly how that maneuver is going to go. But it's going to be something to watch, and that's one of the things that we'll be looking for today. So we will, again, not see a catch. We're not going to see a landing this time, or however you want to describe it, of Starship. But what we should see is a good test of the booster on the way back down. We'll see it hit the ocean. That RAD, the rapid authorized disassembly, although we have Alan in the chat here who says maybe we should call it RAPID, Radical Anticipated Planned and Intentional Disassembly, so we can come up with the proper acronym for that, followed by, of course, Starship going through the motions there. And one of the things that is amazing, I hope everybody sticks around for this if you're just tuning in for the first time, is that we're really for the first time in history seeing a spacecraft re-enter the atmosphere and have video live from that spacecraft for the entire way down. And that's due to the Starlink terminals that are on Starship, Ryan, right?
Yeah, I mean, Starship is literally so big that it can transmit through its wake with Starlink connectivity. And, you know, there's thousands upon thousands of Starlink satellites in low Earth orbit right now. SpaceX can communicate with them. With Starship, it has Starlink terminals built into it, and you can see these vents just going here at the tank farm. Wow. I mean, if this doesn't get you excited, I don't know what gets you excited, right?
It's going to be a lot.
I was saying,
finish your thoughts. Sorry.
As I was saying, with that re-entry plasma, I mean, Starship is literally so big that its wake is big enough that the Starlink terminals can transmit through them, and they can transmit that live high-definition video back to the Starlink constellation. Even though traditionally, you know, even if you think of like the movie Apollo 13, that, you know, that gut-wrenching moment of like, will they come out of blackout? Starship doesn't have blackout because of Starlink. It's honestly, it's incredible.
And they're getting telemetry too, right? It's not just the video images, but they're able to keep track of its telemetry, collect data, because again, we're going to be basically ditching it in the ocean. So they're collecting all that live data on the way down. I'm sure it really informs the entire process of getting Starship ready for its upcoming missions. Now, booster prop loading is confirmed, Alex. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I mean, we've watched this a million times, but it seems like the venting is more significant than I remember it being recently. What's going on the pad there?
Yeah, and speaking of venting, we just had the shut off of the OLM vent, so that's confirmation that all four main tanks on Starship are being loaded, both of the main tanks on the ship and both of the main tanks on the booster, because, you know, we had the update from SpaceX that they had started propellant load, but the propellant is both methane and oxygen, right? And so the last thing that we were waiting for was the liquid oxygen load on the first stage, and that is currently ongoing. We can see already some of that frost building up on the liquid methane tank of the ship. That's the one up top. And so, yeah, all of that activity, all of those vents that you can see there down below above the ticker, those are the subcoolers for the methane side of things. So those are the ones where the methane is currently like flowing through crazy and everything, and it's getting subcooled. that's why they're called subcoolers. Subcooling is essentially, instead of being at boiling.
Ai încercat deja totul pentru a scăpa de mătreața care revine? Nizoral combate cauza mătreții.
That it's denser and they can pack more in the same volume, right? And that's one of the things that enables some of this performance that Starship has to be able to do all of the stuff that they want to do. And that's a liquid oxygen on the ship side of things. But yeah, it's gonna get more frosty, more venti, because as they load propellant, you know, the tanks were empty, right? But there's a gas inside. It's not like they're completely empty. There's a gas. So as you fill up the liquid, the gas gets compressed because you start occupying with the liquid more and more of that volume of the tank. And so you need to release that pressure. And so we're going to see all of these vents coming left, right, and center on the ship, on the booster. Things are going to get more active everywhere. It's just going to be bonkers.
I love bonkers, and I don't think people realize the scale of this thing. I haven't seen one in person yet, but you really have to go and see this, because we're looking at about 30 feet in diameter for this system here. It is enormous, and of course, it is multiple stories tall, the size of a small skyscraper that will be lifting off the pad shortly. And Ryan, you know, this activity of fueling Starship they've actually fueled this system far more times than they have launched it.
Yeah, because back in the earlier days, they would be doing testing of all of the